The Graveyard Girls.
Are we ready for mine?
Yeah, I'm ready for yours.
Well, mine is about the axe-murdering voodoo priestess, Clementine Barnabet.
Ooh, so this is a bit of like a macabre sort of mystery.
It is, but I think she was arrested because she's a black woman.
Oh, okay. Also, a bit of racism we're touching on.
And that she didn't actually commit these crimes.
Okay.
Clementine Barnabet is believed to have been born in 1894 in St. Martinville in Louisiana to Nina Porter and Raymond Barnabet. She had 3 brothers, one of them named Zephyrin.
Right, okay.
So that sounds a bit biblical.
It does a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, Zephyrin. Barnabet's father reportedly abused his family, which might explain some of what goes on in the future. So they moved to Lafayette in 1909. So this is when, when she's still quite young. So I'll give a little bit of history of voodoo/hoodoo because...
Okay. Oh, what's hoodoo? I've heard of voodoo, but...
Voodoo and hoodoo.
What's the difference?
I will come to that because as I was researching it, there was mention of voodoo and hoodoo, but they're completely different.
Okay, because I've never heard of hoodoo.
They're not completely different. They're similar along the lines of it's obviously a religion.
Yeah.
And they sound similar.
Okay.
And it has links to Christianity, but African.
Oh, okay.
So they moved to Lafayette. West of Lafayette, Louisiana, is the city of Crowley. There on February 11th, 1911, homicide investigators found the dead bodies of Walter J. Byers, his wife, and their young son. Judging from the evidence at the crime scene, the unknown assailant had entered the Byers' home from the rear window of a nearby house.
Right.
So I don't understand how they entered from a nearby house, unless they're that close.
Were they not attached?
I don't know. It wasn't clear of that.
Oh, right, okay.
The other house was located in the coloured quarter of the city.
Oh, so it's very segregated.
Yes. So this meant one thing of the investigators, the killer was black.
Right, okay.
Because
so they've already presumed.
They're presumed, yes. I don't know if I'm assuming the investigators are white.
Yeah.
Because they're assuming the killer is black.
Okay.
Bloodletting wasn't unusual in Crowley, especially in the coloured side of town. I'm not going to refer to it as coloured town anymore because I don't like saying that.
No.
I think that's offensive. I don't know if it's supposed to be offensive or not, but on the side where it's segregated.
Okay.
So
we've got black and white community.
Yes. So bloodletting wasn't unusual on one side of the town. However, this crime was different. The sleeping Byers family had been brained in with an axe.
Ooh.
Yes. Obviously, besides this being unimaginably cruel, the killer had also appeared to be brazen. He or she hadn't bothered to hide the murder weapon. The blood-splattered axe was found dripping blood all over the floor inside their home.
I mean, I know head injuries cause a lot of blood, but that's particularly brutal.
Less than 2 weeks later, on the morning of February 24th, 1911, Nina Martin's usual morning routine was interrupted. At approximately 7 a.m., Lazimi Felix burst into her kitchen and said that Nina's sister and brother-in-law had been murdered. Nina rushed over to her sister's home and found an abattoir.
So, I mean, to axe to the head, it's kind of that sort of vibe, isn't it?
Yes. Alexander and Mimi, along with their son Joachim and daughter Agnes, were found murdered. Just like in the Byers case, the murder weapon was an axe and it was found at the foot of the family's bed. 4 days later, the Lafayette Advertiser ran a short article quoting Deputy Coroner Clark, who asserted that the deceased had been brained with an axe. The article included other shocking facts, some of which were surely provided by Sheriff Lois Lacoste. Namely, the newspaper noted that the Andrews family had been killed while they slept, probably sometime after midnight. Alexander and Mimi had been moved after death, with the killer putting them in a kneeling position beside the bed.
Or were they not forced into a kneeling position before murdered?
I don't know. It appeared that they were praying.
Okay. I feel like they would have been in that position before they would died rather than... Or they could have been forced into it, but not after death.
But then rigor mortis might not have set in. And then he could have positioned
manipulated,
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sheriff Lacoste and his men suspected that the murderer of the Andrews family was also the killer of the Byers family. Makes sense. Same weapon. Better yet, Sheriff Lacoste named that their primary suspect was a recently escaped lunatic by Garçon Godfrey.
Right, always playing the mad person.
Mm-hmm. The next killing occurred outside of Louisiana. On March 22nd, 1911, Louis Cassaway, his wife and 3 children also suffered the same fate as these 2 families. They were bludgeoned to death with an axe.
Oof.
As similar as the murders of the Cassaway family seemed to the previous crimes, there were some major differences that caught the investigators by surprise. First of all, the Cassaways lived in San Antonio, Texas, which I didn't see how far away that was, but it's quite a few. That's quite a big difference.
Is it more just a coincidence, or is it the killer moving?
I don't know. And another thing, while obviously all the previous victims were black, Mrs. Cassaway was white.
I feel like these are kind of not related and they've been lumped into one. It's just that happened, they've all been killed with axes.
But the rest, I think Mr. Cassaway was black because
that's quite unusual for the time.
The detectives deemed that this was a hatred of mixed-race couples.
I was going to say, it's very unusual for that time. It was still very much frowned upon.
Yeah, especially
the fact they've got children as well.
Yeah, 1911. It's not long after the Civil War, not long after Reconstruction. It's not long after Reconstruction, I think it's called. It's where the black people were supposed to get land back from working in slavery.
Right.
And
I know what you're referring to, yeah.
Reconstruction. Obviously, mixed race couple, they thought that was the hate crime. After the murder of the Cassaway, Sheriff Lacoste had a new suspect in the form of Raymond Barnabet. Barnabet was a petty criminal and a sharecropper who lived in Lafayette.
I know, but it's one thing to go from a petty criminal to an axe bludgeoning murder. Right.
Raymond had a long rap sheet and was known to have a violent temper.
Oh, okay.
This case against Raymond broke wide open when his mistress approached the police and told him that Raymond had confessed to committing the murders during one of their frequent quarrels.
Yeah, but was she just a bit pissed off?
Exactly. In the autumn of 1911, Raymond stood trial in Louisiana for the murders of 3 whole families. Zephyrin and Clementine, his own children, testified against his father.
Oh.
While on the witness stand, Clementine told a graphic story about how her father came home one night covered in blood. Zephyrin seconded this story, and he went one step further and claimed that Raymond had announced one night that he had killed Andrew's family.
Right, okay.
Obviously, it was highly unusual for his own children to testify against his parents. They felt justified in their actions by claiming that he did it because he also abused them.
So is there also an element of they're trying to get rid of him?
Yes. Yeah.
Because of the way he's acted towards them.
Yeah. So yeah, it was obviously better if he was behind bars. So yeah, you're right. Yeah. Get rid of him. In October of 1911, a Louisiana jury convicted him of the murders. This conviction would not last until the end of October, but Raymond would stay in jail until November of that year. He was let go because of another murder provided his innocence.
Right, okay.
But that could just be anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like just because they were all killed with axes, doesn't mean it was the same person.
It seems like everyone had an axe back then.
I mean, yeah, it's quite a popular weapon, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think they're probably being murdered with their own axes if it's being left behind.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, because they need multiple axes otherwise. Yeah. This is a man that makes axes.
So yeah, obviously his conviction didn't last until the end of October. On October 27th, he was granted a new trial. The reasons behind this was threefold. He had been drunk throughout the entire earlier trial.
Oh, wow, that was good. How was he allowed to be drunk if he had already been arrested prior to the trial?
No idea. So they couldn't take his testimony. The jury had failed to follow the judge's instructions during the deliberation, and finally the prosecution had never bothered to offer a motive for the murders.
Right, okay, which is a big thing.
Yeah, so while Raymond was in prison, police in Lafayette stumbled upon a new crime scene. November 27th of that year, the bodies of Norbert Randall and his wife Zima and 4 children were found murdered inside their cabin located on Lafayette Street. Like the others, 8-year-old Albert, 6-year-old Renee, and 5-year-old Norbert Jr., 2-year-old Agnes had been beaten to death with the blunt side of the axe.
I suppose children are a bit easier to kill than adults.
Yeah.
Not that that makes it right, but...
No. I mean, that was me saying I don't want to cover murders of children. I was just like, oh. So, I mean, they got the non-sharp end of the axe. So, something.
So it's more like a blunt force.
Yeah.
Shot.
As per usual, the murder weapon was found at the crime scene. This time, the axe was partially washed, though.
Yeah, okay, I feel like that's a bit different from the others. Is it either the killers evolving or is it just not related?
I don't know. The horrific slaying of the Randall family sent citizens of Lafayette into a panic. Rumours circulated that the Randall children had been mutilated by their killer. Because of this, well over 150 people met at the Good Hope Baptist Church in Lafayette. The meeting reminded citizens to sleep with weapons nearby, which is not a good...
It's a bit of like a scaremongering.
Yeah, and seeing as they're probably being murdered by their own weapons already.
Yeah, just bring your murder weapon with you.
Put it on your pillow.
Yeah.
Help the killer out. They
didn't think that through, did they?
No, they didn't. It also demanded action from the police, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Namely, the good, God-fearing people of Lafayette thought that the police should look at other members of the Barnabet family. I don't know why everyone's so obsessed with the Barnabet family.
No, I'm not.
No,
sure
I don't
about that either.
Although,
are they going with the theory that the children testified on to cover up the fact that one of them did it, and it was just an easy way to get rid of Dad?
True, unless this family is just notable of being evil.
Yeah, or in trouble all the time. They're a nuisance, maybe.
Yeah. Although few believed that a 17-year-old woman would carry out the gruesome crimes, Clementine was arrested and set in the same prison jail as her dad.
Right, okay.
So I don't know I don't know what conclusion that the police decided to arrest a 17-year-old.
But then again, if that goes back to your earlier thing of the police being white and her being a black lady, is that the reason? Purely, that is the only reason as to why she was arrested.
Maybe. I think they're also trying to provide some kind of comfort to the
public, like something's being done.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, that works.
We arrested someone. We arrested the daughter of the other someone you thought may have done it.
Yeah, we're doing something about it.
While both Raymond and Clementine were in jail, a killer used an axe to snuff out another family. In January 1912, Broussard family of Lake Charles, Louisiana, Felix, the dad, his wife, and 3 children were also killed with an axe.
Right, okay. There's a bit of a theme going on here.
Yes.
They're going to arrest the brother for that one. Oh no, are we actually going to arrest the brother for that one?
This crime scene was the most shocking of all. Not only suggested that the Louisiana was the home of a crazed serial killer, but also a serial murderer appeared to know a thing or two about the occult.
Right, okay.
The murdered Broussard children had their blood drained into a bucket at the end of their bed. A message was written in the blood on the walls. It read, "When he maketh the inquisition for blood, he forgetteth not the cry of the humble." For decades, this inscription had been cited as coming from Psalms 9:12 of the King James Bible.
Right, okay.
However, the King James Bible actually reads, "When he maketh inquisition for blood, he remembereth them. He forgetteth not the cry of the humble."
Right, okay.
The biblical quote left behind on the Broussard. The biblical quote left at the crime scene was from Uncle Tom's cabin. Other facts from the Broussard crime scene soon sensationalized it by, obviously, the media. The El Paso Herald of Texas called the murders a sacrifice and noted that the youngest victim had been found with their fingers splayed and secured with pieces of paper and pins.
Oh.
The words "human 5" were found scribbled at the crime scene as well.
So this is quite a bit more dramatic than the rest.
The newspaper wasted little time in blaming voodoo worshippers for this murder. Despite being behind bars at the time of this crime, Clementine Barnabet confessed to having a hand in the killing.
But they were in jail.
Yes.
Okay.
But I don't know what the interrogation's like at this time. I think she might have been coerced.
Yeah, but how could she have committed it if she was in prison?
Clementine, whose demeanour and behaviour was deemed odd by investigators and newspaper alike, also claimed that she was responsible for 2 more murders that the public knew nothing about. Clementine ultimately confessed to her involvement in the murder of up to 35 people between 1911 and 1912. 17 of these victims were reportedly murdered by her hand, by herself, by her physically committing the crime. After her confession, Clementine was examined by several doctors, most of whom deduced that she was perfectly sane.
Oh, okay. Yes, perfectly sane, go around murdering people with axes.
Due to the severity of her crimes, Clementine was sentenced to the infamous Angola State Penitentiary near the Louisiana state capital of Baton Rouge. On the day of July 31st, July 31st, 1913, Clementine tried to escape from prison, but was captured by officers on the same day. For whatever reason, this escape attempt was forgotten, and in 1918, she was given the job of a cane cutter.
So why was she not given death penalty? Okay.
This meant that Clementine was also allowed to work outside with minimum observation. 5 years later, in 1923, she was allowed to leave Angola for good behaviour.
Right, okay, so they're accusing her of being some axe-murdering, yielding woman, but they've not only not given her the death penalty, but they've just let her walk basically free after so many years.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm not convinced she did it in the first place, but even still.
There's a theory that she's just... I will get into it in a minute. Professor Vance McLaughlin wrote between 1911 and 1912 in the towns along the Southern Pacific Railroad line running through Louisiana and Texas, a minimum of 12 African American families were murdered in their homes. All of these murders occurred at night and with an axe. Only one person was ever punished, and that was Clementine.
Right, okay.
Obviously, her father was arrested, but he was released because there was not enough evidence. He was rearrested, and then he was convicted of the Andrews murders.
Right, okay. But just those ones?
Yes.
Right.
And I think this is the one that Clementine and Zephyrin testified against.
Yeah,
him.
earlier on. Yeah.
It's here that Zephyrin was also held of the murderers, but I believed he was let go as there was no evidence. When she confessed to the 35 murders, she explained that her connection to the Church of Sacrifice, an offshoot of Christ Sanctified Holy Church congregation in Lake Charles, and that's how she was involved with all of the murders.
Right, okay.
She further claimed that a priestess of the Church of Sacrifice had given her and her friends conjure bags, which are good luck charms found in hoodoo.
Right.
And that will give her supernatural powers and make them undetectable to authorities.
But she's perfectly sane. Right, okay.
Okay. The hoodoo item is what apparently spurred her to commit the first murders to test whether or not it worked or not. Her confession was described in contemporary reports as self-contradictory, which makes sense, such as sometimes claiming to have committed the murders alone and other times to have acted with others.
Did she ever name the others?
She named many of the alleged accomplices, but none of them were ever charged. So modern analysis have tended to doubt Barnabet's involvement in the murders. In their book, The Man from the Train, authors Bill James and Rachel McCarthy James argue that some, but not all of the murders were committed by a serial killer named Paul Mueller, while others were committed by copycats. Other than the fact that she had conjure bags, they write that nothing that Clementine said about the murders can A, be confirmed by any other party, or B, have a ring of truth to it. A great deal of what she said is false.
Right, okay, yeah. I feel like it's more the confession was sort of like coerced out of her, like you said earlier.
Mm-hmm. And those authors also say that because she was released in August 1923, after apparently an unspecified surgical operation, which was apparently to have cured her, but it wasn't apparently a lobotomy.
Right, okay.
And then again, the authors argue that if authorities had actually believed she was behind these murders, she wouldn't have been released from jail.
No, and also, so either she would have been insane, which would have kept her in some sort of hospital, but they claimed she wasn't insane, which means she was aware of what she was doing, in which case, I don't understand why she wasn't given the death penalty.
So yeah, I think they just... I don't know why they would have, like, kept her... I honestly don't know why they arrested her to begin with, and then how they got a confession from her.
I think hours worth of questions and she just go in.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the voodoo bit.
Okay.
She's described as the axe murdering voodoo priestess, and then later on it says she's using hoodoo.
Right.
So they may sound the same, but the terms are relatively opposite. Both hoodoo and voodoo are widely practiced and share similar elements and roots in Africa. Both are also products of mixed beliefs that include pagan rituals, ancient worship, and elements of European religions.
Right, okay.
However, the main differences between hoodoo and voodoo is that the latter is actually an existing religion practiced by people, while the former is considered folk magic.
Right, okay.
Voodoo as a religion is an organized institution with established practices like religious representatives, leaders, teachings, and religious services or rituals. Hoodoo as folk magic lacks this foundation and organization. Voodoo invokes the power of the Loas in the African gods and deities. However, hoodoo practitioners invoke the Loas by using Catholic saints.
Right.
Hoodoo is practiced by non-Roman Catholics, while hoodoo practitioners are often Roman Catholics who use both the African concept of gods and the religious saints in Catholicism.
So it's almost like another take on it, isn't it?
Yes.
Right.
With a little bit of magic. Hoodoo practitioners are also followers of spiritualism. I got there. So in hoodoo, they're known as root doctors and healers, and voodoo practitioners is a word I can't pronounce.
Right, okay.
So I don't know why she's got this name of the axe murdering voodoo priestess when it says she's hoodoo.
Right, okay.
So I wanted to clear that up.
Right. I don't feel like she did it in the first place. Although the only interesting thing is that there's no more reports of any axe murderers after she's finally convicted.
All there is, they're just not linked to her.
Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like she
I don't understand why she was arrested. I don't get why her dad's arrested.
And like I said, there's a different distance between them.
Yeah. So unless...
I feel like I said that confession was coerced out of her.
I think those authors are right that it's probably one man who's travelling on the railroad, and that's Paul Mueller, and then it's copycats.
Quite possibly, yeah.
I mean, Raymond Barnabet probably did kill the Andrews family.
Yeah, that one was a personal attack.
Yeah. And then the others are just attributed to the Barnabet, either Raymond or Clementine.
So they must have done all of them, yeah.
But they think Clementine did all of them, even though they arrested and convicted.
Yeah, no, I feel the only reason was convicted of that in the end was it was sort of coerced out. So maybe like hours worth of questions, some form of like torture.
Also,
she just confessed to it because it was easier. And then we'll maybe like give this, we'll give you a lighter sentence, we'll set you free in so many years. That's all they've got to say.
And also the segregated side. I assume the police officers are white going into a black neighborhood.
Yeah. So there's probably an element of fear on her part.
Fear. Racism on their part.
Yeah. And that would explain, like I said, why she would confess to something that she hasn't necessarily done.
But a 17-year-old, she's impressionable. Of course she might admit to something, or she might even believe that she's done it.
Well, you see even in more modern cases, the techniques used by the police in different forms of interrogation force people to admit to things that they never did.
Yeah,
so.
It's like she might believe it because in her head she's got that hoodoo conjure bag. She might think she's doing it by making someone else do it for her.
Right, okay.
So she might think she's doing it.
Or she's at least partly responsible.
Yeah. And she has nothing to do with it. It just happens to be a crime happening when she wanted something to happen.
I don't know. I still feel like that confession was coerced out of her.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the most likely story in this case.
Yeah.
But I feel like there would have been someone else altogether that committed those, or a series of other people, and they're not actually connected. But because one family member committed one,
I mean,
they've all been attributed to the same family.
Yeah, if the local church or whatever it was is asking people to sleep by their beds with some weapons, that's helping.
Yeah, like I said, they've literally provided their own death.
Well, that's the case of the Hoodoo Priestess.
Yes.
Clementine Barnabet.
But yeah, so thank you for joining us again.
Mm-hmm. We'll promise we'll get better.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get there eventually. We'll learn how to pronounce people's names. Yeah.
Learn how to read.
Oh, yeah, we need to learn how to read.
Yeah, read and write.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for listening. Until next time, keep creeping.
And we'll keep digging.
Okay.